Welcome to the Workplace Wellbeing Essential Series. I'm Mari Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Advancing Wellness. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to this expert interview where we explore topics that impact employee well-being. My guest today is Mim Senft. Mim is the president and CEO of Motivity Partnerships, and she's also the co-founder of Global Women for Wellbeing. Mim is a positive force in the wellness and well-being industry, calling for collaboration to move the profession forward. Over the past 15 years, Mim has worked in positions of increasing responsibility in the wellness and benefits field. Mim, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Mari. It is truly a pleasure to be here.
Well, I am excited to have this conversation about topics that relate to women. And with the International Women's Day coming up, we want to be able to talk a little bit about the role that women play in the workplace. In the past year, we've heard a lot about women in the news. I think CNN, it even declared 2018 to be the year of, the woman. And we know that women play a key role in the workforce as well. Women's participation in the U.S. labor workforce has continued to increase since World War II, when it was around 38 or 32 or so percent, to today, where it is in the high 50s, like 57%. So women really make up a large part of the workforce. Worldwide, that number's a little lower. It's actually only about 40%. But another interesting element is that 70% of mothers with children under the age of 18 participate in the labor force. And most of those, 75% of those, are employed full-time. Mothers are primary or sole earners for 40% of households with children under 18 today. We're seeing a number of things starting to happen with regard to the role of women in the workplace, in particular states that are now enacting legislation for around pay inequity. Mm-hmm. And the Me Too movement, of course, has brought all of this to the forefront with workplace harassment and the issues associated with that. And yet, with so many things happening around women in the workplace, we still see that there are few women in leadership roles. So let's explore some of these topics as we celebrate International Women's Day this week. Mim, share with us what your thoughts are about the unique contributions that women bring to the workplace.
So as we've watched women come into the workplace, we still tend to look at leadership through the lens of more male characteristics. And to be fair, we're all on a spectrum. Some of us have more male, female characteristics, but there are some skills and traits that women bring that can drive a better bottom line and drive innovation. First and foremost would be emotional intelligence. And I think anybody who's read the research around this that's come out of numerous MBA programs shows that emotional intelligence is one of these skills that we all need in our organization. So it is something that women can bring in a very unique way. It becomes an economic driver within that organization. It's very important to have teams of people that are diverse and feel included. So the Gallup research shows that women, when they are leaders of teams, are very good at making the team feel very included, making sure that everyone gets heard, which is a nice thing, but there is, again, goes to the economic reason for doing this. That leads to better creative problem solving and faster and more effective innovation. So very clear cost, what do I want to say? It can save you a lot of money and a lot of time if you have everybody's voices in your teams being heard. And so that is something that women do very well. And that gets to the listening skill that women often come very well equipped to do. So I'll give you a specific example about why that's important, particularly in the workplace today. There's a story that one of our members, Fabienne Jaquette, shared with me about a CEO that went into an airport and went into the bathrooms and saw all these old people in the bathrooms and went to several of them and going, wow, we need to have bathrooms that, cater to more of these older people. Like that must be a really great opportunity for us. The good news is he went back to his team, and the team said, well, maybe we better ask a few more questions. And so they went back out, started talking to the people in the bathrooms, and found out that the reason they were in there is because they couldn't hear the announcements out in the main hallway.
Oh, gosh.
So I think it kind of underscores why listening and intentional questions and getting a little bit more information up front, which is sometimes thought of as being a more feminine quality, can, in the long run, help you with innovation and bringing things to market that actually are needed versus what you may perceive it to be. So those are three things that are unique, I think, in terms of what we think of as more feminine qualities.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Now, you mentioned some aspects of the economic benefits of women in the workplace. Could you talk a little bit more about that and tell us, are there ways to actually measure that?
So that's a great question. And I think a lot of the discussion is, this is the right thing to do. We have to get more women into leadership, but there's actually a very good business case for that. So we know that Harvard Business Review has published a couple of articles, and they're not the only major publication that has talked about this. But when you go from 0 to 30% qualified female leadership at the top, on average, you get a 15% bump in your profit margin for virtually any industry. So that to me is the hard
measurable
number.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's very measurable. You can also start to measure the innovations process. So again, that's a longer measurement process, but as you start putting more women into leadership, there's hard numbers about how fast is it going to market, how effective, was the process of getting it to market, and was it really something that the market needed, a program, resource, service. Excellent. So I think those are two pieces. I would also encourage anybody to go out and look at the Gallup data around women and managers. So it's very interesting that the good news is that the company itself is perceived as being a better place to work by women and men when you have more women that are included in leadership positions. So everyone benefits. This is not just about women leading, it's about the entire company actually being more profitable and having a better culture where people can thrive.
Well, that's certainly interesting research. I'm curious about one thing, and that is, as we talk about women in leadership roles, I'm curious about why you think there aren't more women in leadership roles.
I think that's a big question for most organizations, because we know that there are women's affinity groups at almost all the brand names. We've seen them. They've been around for years. But the reality is the numbers at the top have not changed in more than 10 years in virtually every industry. And so it is a very important question. I recently read something that said it's not just a glass ceiling, it's a glass cliff. And I loved that analogy, because it isn't just about us having an equal ladder up to the top and then not being able to break through. There is a much harder trajectory for us. Some of it is about biases, spoken or unspoken, that are still not being addressed in the workplace. As more and more women have come into the workplace, our thinking around work is still very much rooted in the way work was designed 100 years ago. And so how do you bring in the benefits of what women provide, that better profit margin, better team building? But they can't do that if we aren't addressing the unique barriers that are in the marketplace. So a couple of those I'll share with you. One is the pregnancy bias. There's that, I'm a family man, and everybody, great, Jim's having his second child, that's awesome. Jane is having her second child. Gee, do you think she can really lead? Is this a problem? And I'll take it even a step beyond that. There is good research that shows that young women who are not married, not planning on having children, but if they are of childbearing age, there is still a bias there. They will get passed over for a position with the same skills, same education, but the backdoor conversations, unfortunately, are still going on around, well, she's probably going to get married, she's probably going to have a kid. or, well, she's married to somebody that makes money. She doesn't really need that raise, but he's a family man. So we have to get over some of those biases, prejudices, however you want to, you classify that. Until we do that, we are not going to get that benefit of more and more women in leadership. And, a big piece of that is caregiving.
Right.
There are good men out there that are caregivers. I don't want to negate that. But the majority from AARP and pretty much everyone else out there, working mother, I mean, you can go out, there's tons of research around this. Women at all levels, whether you are a shift leader or you're a CEO, chances are if you have children, aging parents or aging family members, or potentially a child that has a disability, you are going to be the primary caregiver. And that means additional unpaid work that you are doing outside of your regular job description that your male counterpart is not doing. That's why flex schedules and rethinking how we design work for both women and men so that it truly is inclusive is something that can potentially start to break down some of those barriers.
Well, let's explore that a little bit, because as you talk about some of these particular issues that impact women, but they impact, any parent in some of those cases. But I'm curious, what can employers do from an organization do? What action steps can they take around women's well-being in the workplace, around maybe some of those topics, such as the caregiving or the need for more flexibility and some of those things?
Right. So I would say first and foremost, if you have a women's affinity group, please take a look at the pictures of all the people in your C-suite. I mean, pictures don't lie. So saying that you have a diversity and inclusion program or initiative to get more women into leadership, but it is not reflected at all at the top, or you have your one token woman, start there first, because I think you have to come to terms with, you can talk the game, but anybody looking at your website is going to know. So I think that's a good place to start. I think with a lot of these issues, and we didn't talk about this, but the financial implications of caregiving is very important. So I highly recommend looking at your organization and is there true pay equity, and not just position to position. This is where it gets a little trickier. So there is obviously that piece of it, but you also have to look at it in the context of, are we moving up women at the same time, and how much are they getting paid? So there was an economic development professional that I met recently. She's an amazing woman, and she works in a governmental organization. They have a pay freeze. She's been given increased amount of responsibility. She's now getting better titles. But when that pay freeze unfreezes, she's going to be at a very different level than somebody that has the exact same job description, who's male. She's frustrated. If women do not get paid as much as their male counterparts, and they are paying for caregiving, it puts us behind the 8 ball from day one. And as the world becomes more transparent, so not only do I think you should do it, we have Glassdoor. People are becoming much more comfortable talking about, how much am I getting paid? Was I passed over for a promotion? I didn't feel like it was a female inclusive environment. It's going to be very important. It goes back to that attract and retain issue that almost every organization is talking about. If we make up more than 50% of the potential workforce out there, and you want the best female talent to be there to help you with that profit margin, then looking at things like pay equity, how you're supporting caregivers. Do you have real paid leave? What kind of real downtime, and not downtime, recovery time are you allowing for people? Because it goes back to, again, if I've got children at home and I'm the person that's taking care of them, it's a lot harder for me to get on an 8 p.m. call when I'm really supposed to be putting my children to bed, as opposed to my male counterpart who A, may not have children, or B, has a spouse that does that. I will say that I think with the younger generations, we're starting to see a shift in how we're thinking about this, but we still got a long way to go.
Well, those are some great tactics that can be employed, but obviously those take a lot of work, because they're big issues. And unfortunately, I'm seeing many of my clients addressing some of those issues. So it's good to see that there's movement in that way. So I'm curious, as a co-founder of the organization called Global Women for Wellbeing, which is focused on some of these topics, what's the unique issue that GW4W is addressing?
We're working to build much more awareness around the deep connection between women's unique health and well-being issues and our ability to lead, but also how we are viewed as leaders. So it is the ecosystem of all the pieces of the puzzle that touch us as leaders and get to some of the deeper gaps that have not been addressed. And we do that through research. Not just research, though, because research is fine, but if you can't translate that into real action steps, it doesn't do any of us any good. It's as good as the research may be. So we're very good about taking that information and turning into practical steps. Some specific examples. We are building a workshop that is about bridging the gender gap, male, female presenter, and it's about really having a deep discussion about what do we think of as toxic masculinity, toxic femininity, what are healthy male role models, healthy female role models, building real conversation in a safe, open space. Because if men and women are truly going to show up as their best selves, it's not just about keeping these conversations in a silo. And so Global Women for Wellbeing isn't just about the women's side of this, it's about how we reach out and make these connections so we can move it forward. We are very big on talking about women's inner voice. So this is important because most of the mental health professionals that we have involved in our organization have told us that at least 25% of the women that you get into a room to talk about inner voice have had real trauma. And that may be rape, that may be domestic abuse, it may be, what it is. So it's important for us to make sure that we are bringing in a resource that is grounded in science and that has somebody at the front of the room that can handle that kind of a conversation in a responsible way and get them back to the company resources like your EAP, for example. So it's not just about leadership and mentoring, it's the inner health and well-being and making sure that they're getting better resources. Wonderful. And then the third piece is the leadership piece. So there are so many amazing organizations that support women, and we are so proud to stand next to them. And so we look at ourselves as being a connector organization. But unless we get leaders at the top of countries, the top of communities, the top of organizations that understand what needs to get done and pushes some of these things down through an organization so that we can pull women up, we are going to be in the same position that we've been for the past 25, 30 years. And so it's saying that this is an and, not an or, but an and to everything else that's already out there in the marketplace so that we can enhance and accelerate positive change.
Well, I'm so excited about the work that GW4W is doing and your commitment to addressing those unique issues. Mim, if our audience wants to learn more about you and the work that you're doing, where can they reach you?
They can go to either one of the websites, motivitypartnerships.com, to learn more about what Motivity does with organizations. If you would like to learn more about Global Women for Wellbeing, you can go to gw4w.org. Please join us on Facebook. And I would invite all of you to look at some of the events that we have coming up and join us. And I just want to say thank you, Mari, so much. Mari, you were a founding member of Global Women for Wellbeing, and thank you for your leadership and everything that you do to connect and do more good in the world.
My pleasure. And as always, it's a delight to spend time with you, Mim. Thanks so much for being here today. You have a great afternoon.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.